Welcome to CBS Sports HQ on your Wednesday. Amanda Guerra, Chris Hassel with you. We're almost to single-digit days until the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I guess.
We're at 11.
11, yeah.
So I was listening to the Kelsey Brothers podcast this morning.
Yeah.
Who do you think Jason Kelsey is cheering for?
Well, former Eagle.
Who lost in the Super Bowl?
I've heard there are Eagle fans that are trying to win this for Jason Kelsey. So I hope he's rooting for the Eagles and not for his brother.
If I were him, I'd be rooting for the Eagles. He says he is refusing to tell anyone who he is cheering for.
That might be smart, because if he says the Chiefs, a lot of Eagles fans are going to disown him.
Right?
Yeah, I
feel like you got to go for your team, though. Your brother has, what, four rings already?
Three going for his fourth. You're right. He's got enough. He's got Taylor Swift. What else do you want your brother to have,
Stop
Jason?
being selfish, Travis.
11 days away from the Super Bowl in New Orleans. Amanda, who's the more exciting player in this game? Is it Patrick Mahomes or Saquon Barkley?
Saquon Barkley.
I agree. Patrick Mahomes, I mean, Leger Doozables called him a game manager.
He's kind of been a game manager this season, but that's what they need to do. Saquon Barkley, he's just exciting.
He is. Home run hitter.
Coming over for the Giants.
I think he's the most exciting player in the game.
Yeah. 100%.
Those are team MVPs of their respective teams. We have an article up at CBSSports.com naming team MVPs for all 32 teams. You're only seeing the guys on offense who were named team MVP. We're going to do defense a little bit later. Offensive guys account for 20 of the 32 teams. And you see upper left, that's where we're going to start. Because I guarantee Pete Prisco's got a bone to pick with that. Pete joining us along with Logan Ryan and Bryant McFadden, those three combining for 4 Super Bowl championships. But Amanda, you saw it, and Pete, you did too. We named, as a company, CBS Sports named James Cook.
Okay, but they didn't ask us.
Well, no, I don't know if they asked Pete or any of these guys, but James Cook has been named Bills MVP of the season over Josh Allen. Pete, take the floor.
That's almost as dumb as Leger calling Patrick Mahomes a game manager. Almost, not quite, but it's close. I mean, are we serious? I mean, Josh Allen might be the MVP of the league. He's not the MVP of his own team. I mean, the guy carried that team on his back. It was phenomenal. Look, Cook had a really good year, and truth be known, Cook probably should have got the ball a little bit more in the championship game. But the reality is, Josh Allen is the MVP of the Buffalo Bills. He might be the MVP of the league. He carried that team on his back, on his right arm, on his legs. And I can't believe that somebody would actually write that James Cook is the MVP of the Buffalo Bills.
Well, Pete, I'm pretty sure they didn't ask you for your opinion, because I know exactly which direction you would have gone. And I'm agreeing with you. You're 100% correct with this. James Cook was outstanding. 19 touchdowns this season on the ground, including the postseason. He was phenomenal. But when you look at the value that Josh Allen brought, Josh Allen wasn't the best, just the best player on their football team. He was probably the second best player or third best player in the National Football League in totality, and he meant a lot. He really carried the team, to your point, because you can look at it like this, guys. If you were to remove James Cook from the lineup, one would think you still would see success in terms of the offense, because they had different guys in the backfield, Johnson, getting opportunities. So they still had decent production. But if you remove Josh Allen from that lineup, that leaves you with Mitchell Trubisky, and good luck in thinking you're going to be successful, not to mention being able to do so and sustain a level of production. So I'm right there with you, Pete. I totally disagree with this. No knock on James Cook. He was outstanding, but come on. Josh Allen is the MVP for the Bills.
Yeah, Pete, you know what I'm going to say? Whoever wrote that clearly has never played a snap of football in the league, maybe not even in high school. I mean, I know how clickbait works, and that's some clickbait. I understand it. But to be an MVP of your team, you have to be the #1 option. And Josh Allen's the #1 option of the Bills. In my opinion, he's the MVP of the league, and I'm sure we're going to debate about that. But he's the guy, and we even saw it down to their failure. He's the guy in third and fourth down. They need to rush the ball. They're not even going to give it to James Cook, the running back. They're going to keep it in Josh Allen's hands. He's the red area threat to run it in, not James Cook. And James Cook had a great year, 19, 20 touchdowns. Absolute great year. But he's not the #1 option on the team. Anybody playing the Bills, if you ever defended them, you ever went up against a Josh Allen team like I have, the #1 option is to take the ball to Josh Allen's hands. And if Cook beats us, he beats us. But we got to take Josh Allen's run game away. You got to take his pass game away. And when your quarterback's more of a running threat than the running back in the red area, that's clearly your MVP of the team. And this is some clickbait. So I don't want to get too much more fired up on this.
The name on the byline is Tyler Sullivan. I don't know if he's the one who picked these himself or if he had input, but I'm not sure if he played Pop Warner football or not, but
maybe
definitely didn't play major football.
And even I'm reading the description for why James Cook should be MVP. It's not even worthy. You can check out the entire list though.
It's not worth it?
It's not. No, it's not. It says, of course, Josh Allen is an obvious and worthy option here. Blah 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 blah. But when Buffalo's offense was humming at its peak, it was Cook who was finding success on the ground. Whatever. Send all your messages to Tyler Sullivan if that's who you have problems with. Let's keep going on. Let's talk about the Minnesota Vikings here. Finish overall this season with a 14-3 record. It was an ugly game. They got bounced to the wild card round. Pete, he is going with Sam Darnold here. Is this a more obvious answer for you?
Yeah, it has to be. Although the final 2 games, I don't think he was the MVP of anybody's list. He was bad. But, I mean, it has to be Sam Darnold. I don't know where else you could go. You could go maybe Jefferson, but I think, you know, Darnold had so much success throwing the football over the course of the season. He did, you know, Jefferson's the #1 guy, but he had success throwing to Addison at times as well. And so I think when you look at it from that standpoint, it has to be Sam Darnold. I have no problem with this choice. And by the way, Tyler Sullivan, this article is going to get you the clickbait you want because we're all bashing it and questioning everyone you put on there.
Yeah, Tyler Sullivan, I think you got this one right. I'm going to go with Sam Darnold as well. Listen, anytime you pass for 5th most in the league in passing touchdowns with 35, 5th in passing yards, you get 14 wins for your team. First year in the system, I mean, that's not a bad year at all. That's a very good year. And, of course, we're going to look at the playoff performance, but a lot of quarterbacks played really bad in the playoffs, like Jared Goff included, and he still had a really good year. That's just how the playoffs works. It's a lot of pressure, and a bad game can turn ugly quickly because you're doing everything you can to win it. So I don't put too much on Sam Darnold for that one. I don't think Minnesota played well as a whole in the playoffs or those last 2 games, especially game plan purposes. If it's not Sam Darnold, it's the coaching staff, right? It's offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, head coach, Brian Flores or whatnot. But as a player on the team, Sam Darnold had the best season for them. He's a huge reason why they won 14 wins. He played extremely well for most of the season, and I think he's a clear-cut favorite for MVP over there, even over Justin Jefferson.
And I think Kevin O'Connell's going to get an award coming up a week from tomorrow. NFL Honors, probably going to be the Coach of the Year there. So that's interesting. Tyler at CBSSports.com goes with the quarterback over the star receiver.
You're just throwing his name out there.
Well, look, he's getting what he wants, right? They're saying clickbait. We're not only are we clicking, we're doing an entire segment on that. We are clicking our heels here. B-Mac, how about, though, with the Bengals, he kind of does the opposite here. He goes with the star wide receiver instead of the quarterback. It's Jamar Chase, B-Mac, over Joe Burrow.
Now, this one right here, I can see it from either side. Both players were unbelievable, right? But if you're going to give it to Jamar Chase, I can accept that as why, because he was the Triple Crown winner this season. He led the league in receptions, 127 receptions. He led the league in receiving yards, over 1,700 receiving yards. He also led the league in receiving touchdowns, 17. And he also had to give quality production with his co-operator in the lineup in T. Higgins. I think T. Higgins missed 5 ball games, but it didn't matter because even when he was doubled, he was open. #1 was a legit playmaker for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he had to do so knowing that his defense couldn't get in quality stops, so they had to try to outscore opposing defenses. And you look at what he did against the Baltimore Ravens, and those 2 games alone, when you look at the high-level players they have in the secondary, they had no answer for Jamar Chase. So like I said, with Tyler, I'm not going to jump on him too bad with this one. I can see from either direction, but if you're going to give it to Jamar Chase, no question, he's a valuable option as well.
Yeah, no way. It's Joe Burrow. I mean, look, Jamar Chase is phenomenal. You want to make him the Offensive Player of the Year for the Bengals, I'll give you that. But Joe Burrow, I mean, he led the league in yards and touchdown passes. Now, a lot of that was necessity because the defense was so bad. But Joe Burrow could have been the MVP of the league if the Bengals were any good. I mean, defensively, because obviously offensively they were very, very good. So, no, absolutely, Joe Burrow should be the MVP choice in this one.
Sticking with wide receivers here. He has 3 rookie wide receivers being named MVPs of their teams. None of these teams did particularly well, except the Chargers kind of redeemed themselves there. Brian Thomas Jr. with the Jags, Malik Nabers with the Giants, and Ladd McConkey with the Chargers here. Each of you are going to get a player. Pete, I'll give you Brian Thomas Jr. Logan, you get Malik Nabers, B-Mac, Ladd McConkey. Pete, we'll start with you.
Yeah, on a bad football team, he was the guy that was the star of the team. I think Brian Thomas was outstanding, and he's on his way to being the Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson type receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's how good he was. There were games where they didn't even throw him the football. He had one game where he had 4 targets. I have no idea why, but he is a special, special player. He was their MVP this year.
Yeah, Pete, with Malik Nabers, even a worse team, he was the best offensive player the moment he stepped on the practice field day 1, and that's the Giants' problem right there. He leads the team in receptions, leads the team in touchdowns, 7 TDs, 1,200 yards, 109 receptions, all as a rookie. That would have broke a lot of records if it weren't for Brock Bowers this year. So he's the best player the moment he stepped off the bus. That's a problem that the Giants have. They got to address that. He knows it well. I know his personality matches that, but he's the real deal. He's their #1 threat. He was their guy right away. He was thrown like it. He played like it. He acted like it off the field. So this is not even a question mark. The only runner-up could be Dexter Lawrence. He had quite the start of the season, but he got hurt there defensively at the end of the year. So Malik Nabers played throughout the year for almost the entirety of it, and he put up numbers week in and week out with really poor quarterback play.
Yeah, for me, when you look at Ladd McConkey, I'm okay with this, guys, and here's why. He developed into their best playmaker. When you look at when he was drafted in the 2nd round, most people felt like he can be an option, but not a reliable option. Most people felt like he can be a contributor, but not a playmaker. But he developed, and he was one of the best reliable options on the offensive side that they had in terms of the skill position of players. And look at what he did in the playoff game. He performed. When everything was on the line, seeing the type of attention he was receiving, he was unstoppable against a high-level secondary in the Houston Texans. Granted, they lost that ball game, but it wasn't because of Ladd McConkey. And one thing I can say about this, when you look at these 3 wide receivers that made the list for Tyler, they outkicked their coverage. And that puts more pressure on who? The guy that's in the 4th spot in Marvin Harrison Jr. Because when you look at what Brian Thomas did, especially, Pete, to your point, and the same can be said for Malik Nabers, guys, the quarterback issues, the concerns. They had musical chairs at the quarterback position, but it did not change their production. Now, if you're Marvin Harrison, when you got drafted, most people felt you were a generational talent at the wide receiver position. These 3 guys outkicked their coverage. Now it's up to you to join the party, because Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey, Malik Nabers, they're looking like legit playmakers moving forward for their said organizations.
And you saw Marvin Harrison Jr. He was not named team MVP of the Arizona Cardinals. That was tight end Trey McBride. Speaking of tight ends, nobody was better than Brock Bowers, and he was named team MVP for the Vegas Raiders, Pete, a guy who broke a record, a tight end record that had been standing since 1961. Mike Ditka, most receiving yards by a rookie tight end in NFL history.
Yeah, and if he had a quarterback, he might have broke the yardage record as well. I mean, look, the bottom line is the guy's phenomenal. He's the best tight end in the NFL. Heading into next season, he is the best tight end in the National Football League in only his 2nd season. That tells you how good he was. And he didn't exactly have the greatest quarterback situation in the world either, with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell and gang. So I think the numbers are fantastic. I think he's going to be, by the time next season rolls around, nobody will argue that he's the best tight end in the National Football League.
All right, Pete, there's a rumor going around that you and BMAC arm wrestled to win the last spot on our promo for our Super Bowl coverage in New Orleans, and clearly BMAC beat you. Is that true?
Well, I've only been to 36 Super Bowls. What would think you'd put me on that promo?
Well, you haven't won. You haven't won too, like BMAC.
What if he put his face on the football?
It's got as much hair as Pete does. Our coverage from New Orleans.
More. It has more.
Beginning
the laces.
February 5th next week. Up next, we'll stick with the guys, Pete, BMAC, Logan, and switch to the defense. There were 12 defensive players named team MVPs at CBSSports.com. Patrick Surtain, one of them. This is CBS Sports HQ. We're breaking down an article that's at CBSSports.com right now on the front of our NFL page, where we name our MVPs, our team MVPs for the season. I say we. It was really Tyler Sullivan that did it. And 12 of the 32 teams
How many
had
times are you going to say his name?
defensive play. Well, I mean, this is like, you got to put a name to it, right?
I feel like we should call Tyler.
Yeah, he probably should have been on the segment to defend himself. You're right. Logan Ryan, Bryant McFadden, and Pete Prisco join us here with the 4 Super Bowl titles combined. And let's go to Patrick Surtain, BMAC, with the Denver Broncos. First team All-Pro for the second time in 3 years. Is he the best corner in the league?
No question. No question he is. I know some will give debates with other players. Derek Stingley was outstanding this year. I mean, he really looked like the Derek Stingley that we saw at LSU. But the thing about Pat Surtain, number one, he traveled week in and week out. Whenever there was a legit wide receiver one on the opposing offense, he followed that said player, and he pretty much put the handcuffs on him. And this is a unique stat with Pat Surtain Jr. and how good he was this season. Late in the season, he allowed a passer rating when targeted of 39.1. Basically, based on analytics, if quarterbacks threw the football into the ground each play, they would have had a higher passer rating than when targeting Pat Surtain Jr. If they threw the football into the ground every play, they would have a passer rating of 39.6. But when they targeted Surtain, they had a passer rating of 39.1. So he was better than incompletions going straight to the ground, which is absurd to see and read about, but that's how good he's been. And the last thing I say about Pat Surtain, Logan, you appreciate this. He had 0 missed tackles the entire season. He didn't miss 1 tackle. That's unbelievable as well. So he's not just a cover guy. He's a guy who's a reliable tackler and one of the best players in the National Football League outside of being the #1 corner in the league.
Yeah, B-Mac, I agree 100%. Pat Surtain should be the Defensive Player of the Year and definitely the MVP of his team. If a defensive player is getting MVP of his team, it's a no-brainer, right? We talk about how offensive linemen don't get enough love. Well, cornerbacks, the same exact thing on defense. Usually if you see him, it's for a bad reason. He allowed a league low. He shadows #1 wide receivers now, so he covers all the best. He allowed a league low only 306 yards all season allowed over 17 games. Do the math there. That's unbelievable. He ties his career high 4 interceptions and has double digits pass broken up. Those are all numbers we look to have, as a DB in a season. And he's a technician. And we know it coming out. That's why B-Mac and I can undoubtedly say he's the best corner. Corner's like, what's your flavor? Like wide receiver. Some are big, some are fast, some are small. It's hard to rank them. Pat Surtain's #1. He's like the Trent Williams of left tackles. Pat Surtain will be the best for quite a while because of his technique. But to only allow 300 yards all season, 0 missed tackles, you're pretty much playing pure and perfect football. And to be up for a Defensive Player of the Year at corner, we know that's a pass rusher award. We all get tired. We roll our eyes at it because they just look at sacks. But what Pat Surtain was able to do on the island all year, I can't say his case enough on why he's a Defensive Player of the Year and the team MVP.
All right, big kudos there from Logan Ryan on Pat Surtain. Let's go to another corner who, according to CBS Sports and our dear friend Tyler Sullivan, won MVP for his team. Derek Stingley Jr. with the Texans here. Of course, last year was all the talk about C.J. Stroud. This time, Logan and B-Mac will go to you guys yet again as our former corners here. B-Mac, we'll start with you. What do you think about Derek Stingley Jr. being named MVP of the Texans?
Derek Stingley has the best ball skills out of any corner in the National Football League, and it really showed up this season. This was his breakout year. He really dominated. I mean, the thing about Derek Stingley, his ability to track the football right there. Look at the ball skills, the eye coordination, hand-eye coordination right there. That's what we saw at LSU that made him one of the outstanding defenders throughout his time there for the Tigers. But his ability to be a big-time playmaker for their defense, I mean, he was outstanding. Of course, he's a willing participant in the tackling game. He loves to get down there and get dirty. I love do-it-all cornerbacks. Corners that can cover, but also corners that does not mind mixing it up, getting a little dirty a little bit, sticking their face in the fan. And the future is extremely bright for Derek Stingley. And I love where we are, Logan, when you look at the cornerbacks in the National Football League. We have a slew of guys that we all could look at and say, he is him. He is him. Derek Stingley is right in that conversation as well, and I can't wait to see what he has in store as he continues to develop in this defense led by DeMeco Ryans.
Yeah, B-Mac, Derek Stingley is like that YouTube high school phenom that we all fall in love with, and they're like, what happened to him? His freshman year at LSU, what he was doing at 18 years old, playing that position, the technique he had at that age was the purest form. For us DBs, it was like a LeBron James high school mixtape. It was unreal to us. And to see him come to the NFL, get drafted high, and now what B-Mac says, this is his breakout year. He's showing and proving he can actually take what he was as a kid, and that actually is translating, right? More interceptions than Pat Surtain, right? He had 18 pass defense, more PBUs than Pat Surtain, but he didn't follow like Pat Surtain does. He didn't have the tough assignment every single week, but he played his best when they needed him to. He played his best in the playoffs. He played his best down the stretch there, allowed Houston to really play well. At the end of the year, we saw they were up and down all season long, but they really won that playoff game because of how well those cornerbacks played, and he really took that challenge. So I love to see this guy that kind of got all this fame when he was young, but that technique, that nuance, that position, it really translates, and now he's going to go to a big payday here because if Pat Surtain was the best corner in the league this year, then you got Derek Stingley, number 2, no doubt, and he definitely backed it up with the numbers.
Some great young cornerbacks. Let's go to a veteran linebacker who may still be the best linebacker in the league. Pete, I promise we're going to let you speak in just a second, but Fred Warner of the 49ers. I got to go to Logan first because a year ago right now you were preparing to play a Super Bowl with Fred Warner, and he was one of those guys, one of the few stars on this team that didn't miss time due to injury this season.
Yeah, let me just explain this about Fred Warner really quickly. So I just said how Surtain's the defensive player of the year this year because the stats and what he's done. But Fred Warner is the best defensive player in football, time in, time out, every single year he wants to be. He had some injuries this year. Does not matter. He's the best linebacker in football. He's one of the best defenders I've ever played with, and I suited with Darrelle Revis, and Fred's going to be a Hall of Famer as well. What Fred does and why he is such the best player in football, in my opinion, is he is such an asset in the pass game. Now, my story was I was retired on a Disney cruise when the 49ers called me to come play, and I started for him 2 weeks off the cruise, not in football shape, and started all playoff long and started in the Super Bowl. The reason I was able to do that, yes, I worked hard. Yes, I'm pretty smart. But it's because Fred Warner played linebacker, and the safety's job's pretty easy in the 49er scheme when you have Fred Warner. I've never played with a linebacker that is asked to do so much in the pass game, interceptions, cover receivers, use his hands to catch the ball. He runs the entire middle of the field and takes that away, and the safeties don't have to do that much because what they asked Fred to do. The defense in San Francisco is built around Fred. He's a leading tackler. He gets busy in the run game. He forces fumbles. And what he's asked to do, unlike pass rushers, is drop back in coverage and take away so much of the pass game. So schematically, he's the most dominant player, what he's able to do in the pass game to the run game. The only thing I've seen something like is Luke Kuechly, and that's the presence that Fred has in that defense. That defense is built around Fred, and if you play around him, you eat a lot because of what his presence is. So every single year that Fred plays, he's arguably the defensive player of the year in my mind.
Hey, look, he's fantastic as a linebacker, no question. Run and chase, cover, can do it all, and he never gets the due he deserves, probably in large part because, like Logan said, he doesn't get a lot of sacks. He didn't play as well this year, but in fairness to him, here's why. He played since week 4 with a fractured leg. Think about that. I mean, that tells you, it speaks volumes about him as a football player. His play tailed off just a little bit. It wasn't the same, but he's still the MVP of that team this year because in large part because he played the entire season basically on a broken leg.
One more player we're going to look at here. B-Mac, this one goes to you. Your former team, the Steelers. You know every person on this team. And being named MVP on our website is that guy right there. Look, he is 35 years old. He has gray in his beard. 14th season for Cam Heyward. Would he be your MVP?
No question. Clearly, it's a toss-up with Cam or T.J. Watt, but if you give it to Cam, I'm okay with that because many felt like Cam had nothing left in the tank. They decided to bring Cam back on the extension, and he did nothing but just dominate. Almost double-digit sacks, guys, 8.5 sacks, and I love what he does in run support. And the thing about Cam has been so good for such a long time. He's aged like fine wine. I played with Cam. I was a part of when Cam was drafted with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he is still playing at a high level. A great guy on and off the football field, one of the best leaders throughout that organization. And when you have number 97 in the lineup, your defense will be a good unit, and we saw that throughout the majority of this season. So hats off to Cam, not just winning this award in terms of Tyler Sullivan, but being one of the more steady anchors that we've seen come through that organization in the history of the team.
Before we go really quickly, Logan, when you got that call on the cruise, did you like set down your drink and walk away from the Faye and go to the gym?
Yeah, I said I'm not getting off it, so give me a week and then I'll report. But yeah, I had to go to the gym a little bit more than the ice cream machine and the bar, so that was. But I went back on the cruise this year. I got to finish the job.
There you go. There you go.
That's good stuff. We officially have been told by Pete Prisco to never run that promo again, that his face isn't on, so we're going to use this block. Our coverage from the Super Bowl begins next week, but of course we've got you year-round, your NFL coverage on HQ, including breaking news all right here.